Hello everyone, this is Dr. Paul Rose back with another MSc hints and tips presentation to help you with your coursework and your research work at university. So this presentation is going to cover the key points of writing an essay, a common piece of coursework that you might have been set many times before, but particularly writing an essay for MSc postgraduate level. The main aims of this presentation are to look at how to approach an essay for an MSc so that you differentiate what you produced from that which would be acceptable at BSc or undergraduate level. To give you some ideas on knowing what to write and how to approach your question, how to interpret the question or title that you've been given so you stay on track and you write the right kind of things. And most importantly, and I will be a bit of a broken record on this one, why reading is your best friend. Reading is essential for you to be able to develop the skills to answer these essay titles correctly. When you're set an essay, the most important thing about it is the title or question that you are given. So make sure you have read the title or the question thoroughly, check that you understand it, speak to your friends and peers, gauge their understanding as well. And if you're stuck, ask the academic that's provided you with the essay. Make sure you read over any instructions that you have been given. Do they make sense to you? Are there words that you need to go and look up? Use an online dictionary or thesaurus to help you interpret and explain the instructions, the question and/or the title of the essay itself. And remember, at master's level, at postgrad level, we're looking for you to show evidence of wider research, of independence of thought, and of being able to go out with a question and work out the best way of answering it. What evidence is out there that you can assimilate, that you can bring together, that shows your academics how you've approached the research itself. So don't assume that the answers to the essay are going to be provided in all of your talk content. If we give you some hints and tips in the talk content, you need to go away and build on them so that you're able to look at other papers and other examples that show this independence of thought. Now, I don't want anyone to sit there and panic because I've just said that the answers to the essay and the content that you need to review is not actually going to be in your lecture. Because the MSc is level 7 and that's building on what you have done at level 6, the last year of your undergraduate degree, we are stretching you to do more critical analysis, more critical evaluation, and to synthesize more of your own interpretation of the literature, of the examples out there, and of the research that you engage with. So think critically, think analysis of what you read, make sure you evaluate the papers that you get hold of, and consider your discussions and conclusions of them. Have you synthesized some novelty of your own? Have you taken your own thoughts and ideas and supported them by the review that you've done? You must read widely. You must read over a paper, highlighting key phrases, terms, examples, and ideas. Start with the abstract, and if the abstract grabs you and you think it might be relevant, then read the introduction and the results, the conclusions and the discussion, and maybe the method if it's helpful in depth. And personally, I always think it's better to read a paper rather than have it read to you. There is a new trend for audio books, as it were, of scientific papers, but how much of that do you actually take in? If you read over something and make notes from it, or do any form of revision activities from that paper in your own style, the chances are you'll gain more knowledge and understanding of what the paper contains. So yes, we will give you some clues as to what the essay is about, but not as many as you would expect to have at undergraduate level. So with that in mind, how do you know what to research? If we're not going to tell you everything you need to know, and we're going to leave you to be independent, Where do you start? Well, don't panic, because the question or the title will allow you the chance to build some threads that will lead you through the maze of scientific papers that are out there. So go back to that question, go back to that title, and look at it in detail. What keywords can you find? Highlight them, select them out of the title, select them out of the question, and use them to put into a search engine to find results. When you read a journal article, you'll find that underneath the abstract are keywords, and they work in the same way. They flag up search terms so that when people put in search terms into a search engine, that paper appears. Imagine your title is the keywords that you need to search for the literature to allow you to answer the question. Personally, I recommend starting with Google Scholar. It's quick and dirty. It's like McDonald's at the end of a heavy night out. It does you good for that one particular moment, but it's not sustenance for the rest of your life. So start with Google Scholar and then move on with any papers that you might find from there to a better quality search engine that will search a wider range of topics. For example, Web of Science, which many of you can access with your university login details. This is like your roast dinner. This is like your 5 a day. It's more substantial, it's better for you, and it gives you more in rewards because it searches more broadly, more widely, and it has access to many, many different journal repositories where your keywords might spark ideas and might bring you new findings. Also, remember to look at current papers for up-to-date information. Choose the years that you search for. Bring up new papers first so you see what's currently out there. What are people currently working on? What are the contemporary issues in the topic? But remember, the introduction to your work needs to be grounded in seminal theory, background papers that explain the history, the background, the support to the novel pieces that are just coming out. So remember to search for older papers too and explain why they are important at the start of your essay. And like what you've done before, think about the format and structure of the essay. This is not going to change greatly between what you have experienced at undergraduate level and what you are doing now at postgraduate level. You'll have an introduction, the first paragraph or two, which defines your terms and describes theory. It sets out the scaffolding for the rest of your narrative, for the rest of the story that you will tell about that scientific question. The bulk of your explanation, the bulk of your text, needs to be in the main body of the essay itself. This is where you give examples from the scientific literature. This is where you state and support your arguments, where you do critical analysis and critical evaluation of the science that's out there. You critique, compare and contrast a range of different papers. The main body is your sales pitch for your understanding. This is where you need to show to the reader, to the marker, to the academics that set the work, why you have covered the concept in the way that you have, and why you understand it. The main body is your sales pitch for your understanding of that essay's title. And remember that every good essay ends with a conclusion, and a conclusion does two things. It tells the reader the most important thing that you found out, and it also gives them an overall take-home message, the wider application or the wider importance of what you've done, what you've found, and all of that information that you have synthesized and brought together. So we're asking you to do two things that might sound a bit contradictory. We're asking you to review a body of literature that's out there, yet be original and novel and synthesize something new from it. So how do you do that? How do you be original yet still answer the question? Well, this again is my approach to essay writing, and I recommend you do these 6 things. Firstly, read widely to know what arguments and ideas are out there. Secondly, read widely to understand where the topic or where that field is going. What's the groundbreaking research that sprouted loads of new avenues of science? Next up, read widely to develop your skills in evaluating, comparing, critiquing and reviewing examples. It's essential that you develop your own academic style through wider reading. You will learn how academics write. You will learn how to develop your style of scientific prose by reading the scientific literature that's out there. Next up, read widely. There's a kind of a common theme here. Read widely to learn which articles and papers form the backbone of the subject. Who does everybody reach for? Whose paper has the most citation number, the biggest impact? Why is that the seminal piece of work that others are based on? Go and identify that seminal work and see what it's generated. Remember that science is cumulative, so we build on the past, we add new stuff that others can use in the future. Next up, read widely to familiarise yourself with authors who work and research in that field. Go and look up those authors, find their university departmental profiles, and their reference lists will be on there. Look at their reference lists, see what they've been working on, and you'll find new, potentially novel examples that maybe Google Scholar won't have thrown up that you'll be able to use to synthesize more information from. Once you've done steps 1 to 5, you then bring all of those ideas, all of your thoughts, feelings and arguments together, and you present them to the reader using these examples from your wider reading to justify your arguments, to justify the examples you've used, and to justify why you're writing about them. That is your originality, and that is your novel approach to the title. So the next piece in the puzzle, we're putting all of these bits together to create your essay, is how do I justify my ideas? I've got the novelty and the originality. How do I do the justification? Well, again, here is my list of ideas that I would do. Take an example from the literature, introduce it, explain it, tell the reader about it. You do that at the start of your paragraph. Then provide a further example for comparison, for evaluation and explanation of that previous example. Compare and contrast and discuss these examples together. That's the next bit of the paragraph. Now we're getting to the middle of the paragraph, and maybe we can build in some other examples, some other pieces of literature that also explain why the first examples were important, or give new ideas, new concepts, new ways of interpreting the science. What else is out there that's important or relevant for you to consider? End your paragraph with what we call added value. That's the synthesis of what these examples mean. Tell the reader how they support your arguments. Explain to the reader why you have chosen them. What I mean by that is write out their relevance, importance, comprehension. You don't have to write out, I have chosen these examples because. Weave your words together to tell a story of how all of these scientific papers link together. And please remember that your essay will have a narrative. It will start with the introduction of the key concepts. It brings the reader through all of these published examples, and it ends with a conclusion. So paragraphs must have bridges between them. There must be a link between paragraphs. Don't just shudder to a halt at the end of one paragraph and then car crash into a new topic in the next paragraph. Weave them together so the reader can see how all of your ideas link up. And this narrative is really, really important because all scientific publications, essays, reports, formal published papers, the good ones at least, they all have a narrative, this central thread that leads the reader through the journey of your science from introduction to conclusion. And if you want to know what that thread is, it's based on your title. So go back to the title and to the question and think about how you've interpreted it. Build your words around that title to keep them on track. And if you find yourself going off track, or if you find yourself going off on a tangent on something that you think is really super interesting, just check yourself. Does it actually help me tell my essay story? Can I use that information to work out whether or not I'm answering the question or completing the title? And if the answer is no, leave it out, scrap it, and find a better example. The best essay writers, the best paper writers, are those that are brutal in their self-editing. Self-editing takes practice, but once you get there, you'll have a clearer and more comprehensive thread, a better narrative to your work. So the originality, the novelty, the justification for your ideas, the relevant coverage of the title, and the story that you tell all comes from the literature. So please remember to read widely. I'm not sure I've said that phrase enough. Read widely and reference consistently. Whenever you take information from the published literature, cite because you're acknowledging the original author. For common concepts or theories that abound in scientific papers, give a couple of citations per point. You don't need to reference every single citation that you find that concept in. And if you find yourself with lists of citations, 8, 9, 10 authors long of different papers, this can really confuse the reader. And if you have got a list of citations of 8, 9, 10 different papers for one point, best practice is to then evaluate each of them in turn to tell the reader why they matter. So it's better to be selective. It's better to evaluate and discuss quality papers rather than have massive lists of citations per point that you don't evaluate in turn. So cite thoroughly, cite consistently, but think about who you're citing and why you are citing them. Please refer back to the published literature to check your facts and interpretation. Don't misinterpret or misrepresent scientific outputs. Don't assume you know something because you've read a secondary source. Go back to the primary source and make sure that the secondary source's information is true to the primary source. That's why it's so useful to look at the reference lists of the papers that you read, because you're not relying then on somebody's second-hand interpretation. You can find the paper they have cited and then read that paper yourself. And 2 key points to finish on. Read over your reference list when you've written your essay. Has everything in that reference list cited? And also check your citations. Is everything you cite actually in your reference list? Just make sure your reference list is an accurate representation of the work that you have cited, and the citations are accurately reflected in the reference list that you produce. I hope this short presentation has been useful to you in giving some hints and tips on essay writing at postgraduate level. Did I mention that reading is key? I think I might have dropped it in there 1 or 2 times. But trust me, trust all of the academics that you encounter during the course of your MSc, because reading really will help. It's your best friend in developing your scientific writing skills and the way in which you evaluate, interpret, and explain the literature. Thank you very much.